So I want to make sure again that everyone knows that later this evening, Gary and his colleague Michael, who's in the front row and now moving, will be bringing telescopes and holding an immersive stargazing experience. So they'll offer tours at 3 different times this evening, and you can find the details in your program. I hope you can join them. I think it's such a unique opportunity, and hopefully the clouds will lift and we'll be able to see a lot more. We're now going to have a conversation about sustainable small-scale livestock farming with a look at a company that is working to drive progress in the egg industry. So joining me for this discussion is, messing up today all over the place. Joining me for this discussion is Andrea Chu, the Director of Impact at Vital Farms. Please give her a round of applause. And I hope that many of you who are here for brunch were able to eat breakfast tacos, thanks to our friends from Taco Deli featuring eggs from Vital Farms. Round of applause for those folks. They've been working very hard. So, Andrea, simple question. I love your t-shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
But simple question. Explain Vital Farms for folks just real quick. Give us an overview of the company.
Sure. We were founded in Austin more than 15 years ago, and we sell pasture-raised egg and butter nationwide. We are B Corp certified, a public benefit corporation, and publicly traded.
And you work with a lot of different kinds of farmers.
Yes, we have a network of more than 300 farmers who raise hens for us, and we process and pack all the eggs and distribute them to your grocery stores.
Great. Well, and I'm glad you brought up grocery stores. I don't think we can have a discussion about eggs without the rising cost of eggs that we've seen over the last year, 3 years now. I don't eat eggs personally. My husband, I'm allergic. My husband and my family do, but I only buy Vital Farms eggs. And so, I saw that increase very personally from, $7.99 in some cases to then to $10.99. Still bought them, just didn't cook them as much. And so, can you talk about what? It's very costly. These are good eggs. They're grown the right way. The chickens are treated the right way, the farmers are treated the right way, but it's a lot of money.
So if you think about the conventional egg that you find in your grocery store, it's treated like it could more or less be a widget. There's little origin, you know very little about how it was raised other than the bird was probably in a cage. And at Vital Farms, we think of an egg as a full entity. I think Ade this morning talked about when you buy things at the grocery store, thinking about where it came from, how it was raised, and all the steps it took in the journey to get into your grocery basket. So at Vital Farms, we're thinking a lot about all the stakeholders that were involved in bringing that egg into your home. So everything from the farmers we work with, the feed mills that produce feed for the hens themselves, how they were raised from chicks, and thinking about all of those externalities of the environment, the soil, the people who raise and work on the farms. We're bringing that all together. And yes, it is more expensive at the grocery store shelf when you see it just in that one moment, but when you think about all of the long-term effects of conventional agriculture, industrial agriculture, and what that means for the long term.
As a company, you've really taken true cost accounting into account. Sorry for doubling up there, but I think this word you used, widget, you really took the factory out of the farm in a way that I think so many of us who care not just about animal welfare, but farmer welfare and the welfare of the land can appreciate. And so if you can just talk a little bit more about the farmers, the producers you work with, because there are stories, and you can find those stories in the cartons.
Yes, if you open every carton, we have a little newspaper in there that we call Vital Times, where you can learn. There's always a hen of the month, a little story about kind of what we're doing at the company and about our farmers. And we think that's a really important way of keeping our consumers informed about what is actually happening and what we do. Transparency is number one for us at Vital Farms. We have a slogan that we like to say, we're bullshit free, and we really try and uphold that every day and be honest about what we're challenged by, but just as much where we're succeeding. So I think one of the really unique things about Vital Farms, and if I can talk at length about the problems of mainstream protein industry, but one of the things that's really unique is that we will buy every egg that our farmers produce. So most protein companies work with their farmers and purchase by volume. And so if a farmer has a particularly successful year, but they've only contracted for so much, they have to be responsible for finding a buyer in a market for what they've produced. Whereas we have exclusivity, so that gives us both equal investment. Farmers are invested in our success and we're invested in theirs. And we have a full farm support team of 30 farm support advisors that are out there working closely with our farmers every day, offering things from nutrition advice to how is the forage and grass looking, to how we're swabbing for food safety and all of these different things. And so we have a really, really close-knit relationship, which really sets us apart.
Amanda, you've said sorry, Andrea, why did I do that? Sorry. Andrea, who I've known and loved for a long time, I apologize. You said two really important things. One is you give farmers a lot of confidence, right? They don't have to go and find a new contract every year. That is key. That is more important than anything else I think a company can do. And that you have this farm support team. So in a world, in the United States, where extension services are lacking, they have not gotten the support and funding that they need in a lot of ways. Those are two really important things that the private sector is taking on that the government used to.
Yeah, and not just extension, but if you think of NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is an arm of USDA that used to have reps out there in the field bringing new research to farmers, that's becoming less and less. And so while we'd love to see that office get funded fully and staffed to its full potential, I think the future of U.S. agriculture depends on it. We're trying to really fill that gap in the meantime.
Yeah, it's so important. Thank you for doing that as a company. I'm wondering if you can talk about your approach to what we've talked about a little bit this morning, which is regenerative farming or regenerative practices.
Yes, and I think it's a really important call out that a lot of regenerative agriculture practices are grounded in indigenous practices as well. And a lot of what Vital Farms standards is grounded in that as well. So all of our farmers are required to practice pasture rotation. Our hens are rotated every certain number of weeks to let the land have time to regrow and the nutrients to kind of replenish in the soil. Additionally, none of our farmers spray pesticides or fungicides on the pasture. So the birds are out there foraging, and it is a natural ecosystem occurring. But on top of that, we're working with our farmers to figure out how a lot of them have diversified operations, so how can they rotate other species on their pasture? So hens are eating low to the ground, sheep and goats are browsing twigs. So it creates just as much as you need to mow your lawn, you also need to trim back hedges. So it's kind of an equal amount of maintaining that pasture to a full ecosystem. In addition, we're always making sure that bare ground is always covered, and so that our farms are more resilient to adverse weather conditions like drought or floods.
Yeah.
And then also planting cover crops so that our birds have diverse forage. They're not just eating bugs and grass, but also maybe clover and sunflower and different types of grasses as well.
It's very cool, and we talked about that diversity of people and animals and everything that needs to go into farming, but it also provides a diversity of economic resources when you have more going on your farm.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say almost all of our farmers aren't just solely Vital Farms hen farmers. Some of them may have a cattle operation, as I mentioned. Some of them actually grow their own feed on their farm. So being able to have that autonomy for farmers to find different income streams is really important.
Yeah, it's so important. Andrea, when we last spoke, you talked about the importance of pragmatism when it comes to developing sustainability strategies. And I say this every time I'm on stage, I can't help it. We've all seen those companies that say, hey, by 2050, we're gonna reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Too late, everyone, okay? So I'm wondering how you balance that practicality with the urgency for change, and I mean this in the best way, the need for marketing, that you have environmental practices and benefits that you want your customers to know about. Those are really three things that you sort of have to balance in that storytelling.
Yeah, for sure. And you'll notice we just launched our latest impact update this morning, so you can kind of dig in online. But we intentionally set our targets no more than 5 years out. That gives us a sense of urgency, but also a sense of transparency to our stakeholders about where we're going. So I think one thing that I think a lot about is, for a lot of companies, supply chain related emissions, what's happening upstream from the farmers or suppliers that they source from, they often don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Whereas we have that direct relationship and can really help our farmers continue to raise the standard of what they're doing. So we have a target to scale additional regenerative agriculture practices across our network of farmers. And yes, we know there's going to be greenhouse gas emissions reductions related to that, but for us, it's not about setting a specific number. Measuring is really important, but it's not the whole thing, right? A lot of this work is behavioral, community-driven,
Sure.
and we really want these to be long-standing shifts in our food system. And so working on the ground with our farmers to show them that this is actually really good for their business, for the longevity of their farm. If they want to pass this farm on to their next generation, they need to keep the land going and productive. And so really tying it to that long-term stewardship is what matters.
Andrea, what if you can't make your goals, and you've put them out in this impact report that came out today? What if you can't make them? What will you tell everyone?
We're gonna tell you that we miss them. That's definitely the first thing we'll say. It's scary putting it out into public, what we're going to commit to, but we have to. People are expecting more from business these days.
Yes.
And Vital Farms, its whole kind of founding and how much we've grown, is a testament to the ability for business to do good by being good. And so, as I said, we're bullshit free. We want to be really transparent. So we're going to tell you if we can't make it. And why, and also how we're going to do better.
Right. It's an example that many other companies should follow as well. So hopefully they're learning from you. There has been huge support for small-scale fruit and vegetable producers over the last a decade and a half maybe in the United States with farm bill changes, but that doesn't seem to be the case for small-scale livestock producers. For big producers, there's certainly a lot of funding going on. What do we need to happen sort of locally, regionally, and federally so that, your farmers, the farmers who work with you, get the resources that they need, like those big livestock producers?
Yeah, it's making that funding available and changing some of the incentives that structure programs like EQIP and conservation programs out of NRCS, that there's just an inherent weighting system that precludes smaller scale producers from getting those contracts and getting the cost share to adopt better environmental practices. Even shifting to higher animal welfare systems is so costly. It requires so much upfront capital, and everything's more expensive these days. Building bigger houses so that hens have more space is more expensive. So there are a bunch of really great animal welfare organizations like ASPCA that is pushing for appropriations to help offset some of that cost. So much of our current USDA system incentivizes commodity crop agriculture, really large-scale agriculture, and we've done a really good job over the last 50 years of really optimizing for that one thing, which is output and yield, without consideration to all the others. And so there's a lot of room for kind of reshifting it to optimizing for multiple things.
I wonder what your call for action in the last couple of seconds we have left is for this audience.
First, buy our eggs. I promise you they're really delicious, and hopefully if you got some breakfast tacos this morning, you saw that for yourself. But also, really important to support your local independent news sources. Just not to mention Food Tank, but I would also call out Civil Eats, the Food Environmental Reporting Network. They're telling stories and doing the investigative journalism around our food system and a lot of the companies that control our food system that mainstream media isn't telling. So be curious about those things and support your local news.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Bullshit free, everyone.
Thank you so much.